Hello, I'm Jace Tanner. I'm here with Emma Gregory reporting from Vancouver's Downtown Eastside, a neighbourhood with severe issues, amongst them poverty, homelessness, and drug overdose, all of which have intensified with the pandemic.
For this episode, we spoke to Eliza McCullough. She's a legal advocate for women facing multiple barriers to justice, including unfair treatment by the police and domestic violence. Before being a legal advocate, McCullough worked as a manager of supportive housing, and long before that, she lived in supportive housing. In this video, Eliza explains her perspective on why the neighborhood functions as it does and the value of advocacy work.
My name is Eliza, and I'm speaking from personal experience and not as a representative for my employer. For that reason, I'm not going to identify who I work for, but I am a legal advocate now and have been a program manager in the Downtown Eastside for 12 years.
A lot of people think that the Downtown Eastside and the services available to them and our support of them exacerbates the problem and actually, feeds into a cycle of dependency. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think a lot of people actually feel that people are almost spoiled, like people who are being given welfare or disability while living in addiction, that it's perpetuating the issue. I mean, it's hard to explain to somebody who isn't from a place of poverty or abuse how you end up in a destitute situation. My feeling is that of equality. Like, every person in our community has the right to housing. I mean, even that's what our Canadian politics say, is that we all have the rights to those freedoms and safety and housing and to exist, to live, to be free, to be healthy, to be Indigenous, yet you don't see that reflected in our community. You see a very oppressed community who's been absolutely shoved off to the wayside. We don't see our government investing in social care for people. We see people being ignored. And so you want to complain that people aren't prospering or doing well or contributing to the community, contributing to society. They're also not being offered addictions treatment. They're not being offered counseling for PTSD. These are all symptoms of our own society. So, it's easy for people to say, I'm not part of that. That has nothing to do with me. Well, that could be your aunt. That could be your uncle. That could be your grandpa who used to be a logger who now lives in a rundown, bedbug-filled hotel having a beer every night with a smoke. That is our community. Those are our people. We aren't separate. I am that community. I grew up down here. You wouldn't necessarily look at me and think like, oh, she's from the Downtown Eastside. And I'm proud, and I stand by this community, and to be fair, I was one of them. I used to separate myself. I used to look at crackheads and go, oh, those guys, they're so aggressive. They're drug addicts. I had judgment. When you actually speak to people, when you spend the time in the housing down here, getting to know the real community behind the ugliness you see on the street, because it isn't pretty, let's be honest. We see a lot of suffering down there. But when you actually get to know the real community, you have a real conversation, you get to share those smiles with someone, those laughs, those conversations. They're not separate from us. They are us. And I think that's why people are so judgmental, because they know that they are one paycheck away from being down here. They lose their housing, they lose their job, COVID continues, they don't have a way to fill their income. We could all be here, Some of us are much further away from it than others.
The Downtown Eastside isn't a bad thing. It's like a symptom of like a much larger society. An easily identifiable place to pin, blame or scorn upon, but it's just kind of like, this is part of the world.
Right. That's a really good way to put it. Absolutely. I would say this is a place where many people from all over Canada, but even all over the world come. You see a lot of people who like have immigrated here who are quite vulnerable because a lot of their skills from their countries don't translate when they come here. You see a lot of the effects of colonization and Indigenous people off reserve here. You're right. Like I think that what you see here is a mix of many people who are quite vulnerable, who really need a place to be, who don't have too many privileges or resources to kind of fall back on. It depends on your view, though. I've changed my view about drugs a lot, like, over the years. And we can get into that or we could not, but...
Tell us about it.
Sure, yeah. So I guess, just talking about the drug use down here. I mean, before I started working down here, as someone who had stopped using any hard drugs, I was, convinced that everybody should stop using drugs. And I was a bit narrow-minded when I started. I didn't necessarily go and lecture people, but I did, in my mind, think, you really need to get off drugs. Like, to me, it was quite simple. Like, if I could do it, so can you. Over the years, I've realized a lot of the people are using it for pain management. So once you start getting prescribed pain medication, say you have a long-term chronic back issue, you have a leg issue, you have any of these injuries, loggers, veterans, tons of people are living in chronic pain. And so a lot of the times when you see opiate use, it starts out from the prescribed pain medication that's given, and then it just is never going to be enough. There isn't then treatment to manage the pain. We're not seeing massage. We're not seeing physio. We're not seeing actual management and treatment of the real pain. If you had a good healthcare benefit through work or some money to go actually manage and rehabilitate your injuries, I think you'd see a lot less use. And then I'd also just say, and maybe both, you've got mental health and you've got trauma and then physical pain. So people are treating those. And I guess what's changed for me is over the years, I've kind of decided, like, it's just a personal preference, whether you're using or not. Whatever you're using, maybe it's coffee, maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's cocaine on the weekends if you're fancy, maybe it's heroin if you're trying to manage some pain or some trauma, and now it's fentanyl. It's stronger, it acts quicker. So what I guess I've realized over the years, it's not necessarily about judging whether somebody's sober or not sober. It's about looking at their use. How is it affecting their organs? How is it affecting their long-term health? How is it affecting their mental health if it's crystal meth? Is it, a hindrance to their living a good life? So that's what I started to look at more than, are you an addict, are you not? Do you know why I think people are here is because of the other people. And that's why I couldn't leave addiction, was because there was a family. There was other people who were in similar positions to me who I could sit up with all night long and talk to. That's why I'm here today. Because when I walk out of my door to walk my dog, I run into them. I see people. I see community. They say hi to me. I say hi to them. We laugh. We go, the huge smiles and funny stories. And you don't get that anywhere else. This is the only neighborhood that I can say that I can actually walk outside, run into several people that I've known over the years and have a real genuine exchange and have real appreciation between each other. So I would say it's a lot of people are here because of the other people that are in the community that they want to be a part of, and also that they're facing similar struggles. There's also, this is where the resources are. This is where the last of the cheap hotels are. This used to be all cheap hotels. Everything was $375. You were on welfare, you could rent one of these rooms. There used to be rooms all the way up to Nanaimo and Dundas that were $375. I used to live in them. Now it's become less and less, and now it's all downtown Eastside. So, I would say that's why people are here. Well, I think that the police are here because of real estate, and you can see all of these buildings are getting bought up. I don't know by who, but I'm pointing over here at the buildings across the street from my place. Like, those buildings are all being bought and developed. And when you look at what's going in, you see boutiques, you see condos, you see SROs becoming boutique apartments that are being rented out for $2,000 a month. I'm pretty new to our legal advocacy department, but what I've seen so far is, so I've been there since September. It's April now, and I have seen 3 cases of violence towards Indigenous women. Both of them were elders. And you hear about this, commonly in the Downtown Eastside. It's nothing new. I think a lot of attention has been put onto the police to improve on this, but yet you still see cases. I think also there's also just a lack of training and knowledge when it comes to responding to mental health emergencies. We do deal with in our legal advocacy department, we do see a lot of police violence against Aboriginal women specifically. We are managing cases and have been successful in cases against individual officers who have been violent to Indigenous women. So that exists, absolutely. Also, what exists is some officers who go above and beyond, who are kind, who I do believe are in the job for the right reasons, and who have helped people down here.
You've been working down in the Downtown Eastside in support for 12 years?
Yeah.
Can you tell me, I know that there was a time where you had to take a step back from working down here. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. I took a leave. I'm actually on a leave now. I'm retraining, so I'm in a practicum and I'm in school now. But prior to my leave, I think what happened for me was we had about 4 years of opiate pandemic. When it hit hard. I was managing a youth program at the time, and I lost a youth. To an overdose, and it was super painful. And we saw more youth overdosing. It happened quickly, and then I moved to a different building. Right on Hastings Street. So we had a lot of street front. We had a lot of guests coming in the building. We had a lot of street front overdoses happening. We started having deaths, 4 deaths in a month at times. Sometimes 2 overdoses on one shift. You'd go to have a coffee, take your break, you'd be managing an overdose on your way to your coffee. So what happened wasn't the burnout from the deaths, it was a burnout from what happened to my staff team. Because I was the manager of the program, my team started to sort of dismantle and triangulate against each other, triangulate against me. And when that happened, on top of already losing, hundreds of residents, friends from the street, community from the street, I was responsible to support the staff. When we lost a resident, I would call all 20 of them and let them know that somebody passed away. That was hard for me. And then I would be hosting the memorials for the people who died, sometimes 2 at a time, in one memorial, trying to find the words to say, seeing the family members there, seeing the looks on the faces of our tenants. And then meanwhile, maybe going and managing an overdose just after that on your way home. So, also I had been on call. I'd been on call for 10 years, 24/7 for programs. So we say we would get calls for fire, flood, or death. And then we'd get calls for scheduling. So anytime somebody didn't come to work, you'd get a phone call. So, you're doing that job all day long, and then you're at night managing any incidents that happen in your building, and then any staff that don't come to work. So I was really, I still wonder, would I manage a program again? I love the work. I love being a manager of a program because it's a family. You're part of a big, huge family, and I love that. I love what the organizations are doing. There's lots of politics. You hear all kinds of, work safe and politics and funding and where does it go. But I have to say, the organizations I've worked for, I stand by them. For the most part, I felt good about their decisions. Sometimes they're hard decisions. They're people's housing. You're responsible for a lot when you're a program manager in the Downtown Eastside. You're more than a social worker. You're making decisions for healthcare. You're making decisions for their housing. You're overseeing health and wellness checks, making sure everybody's been checked on. You're trying to encourage people's medical care. You're trying to attend those appointments with them and advocate for them. You're trying to look ahead at what their future goals are. Where are you going to go for retirement? Well, you can't live in this building forever. Where are you going to go? And then when you lose somebody, you feel very responsible. You feel like that happened because of a decision I made. I let that person come home from the hospital and they passed away. So I didn't keep that woman safe. I tried, and then the guy who I tried to keep her safe from murdered her. That was on me. You felt like, what could I have done differently? And didn't notice it building up. And I was very stubborn to not take a break because I was serving at a post. I didn't want to go and leave those people who depended on me and take a break that I needed because I was who they had. I had built all those relationships, all that rapport with all those people, and the staff team and my bosses. I wanted to have a good rapport with my bosses. I didn't want to take a leave and leave my program to who. So you stay, and I'm proud that I stayed. I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for all the work that I did. I'm also really grateful for the time that I took a break, and that I wish that I had honestly done it sooner and taken some care of myself along the way.
You've just heard from Eliza McCullough about why she works in the Downtown Eastside.
Advocacy work is one of the ways people in the neighborhood are provided support. There are a multitude of organizations working in the Downtown Eastside and outside of the neighborhood, addressing the issues that are visually represented by the people one sees at Main and Hastings.